Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores coming with a few updates, and most notably, Rivera is not playing. That's why I have it in the title. Apparently, we offered a lot for Russell Wilson. The Seahawks declined. Of course, we got to dive into that and see if that is even a realistic possibility at this point. Like, how much more will we have to offer? We, of course, have to talk about what we offered as well. Then we also have to talk about how Amari Cooper looks like he's on his way out of Dallas. And do we need to swoop in and try to get him again? It's also been reported from very close sources that Rivera is high on Willis. He's also fairly high on other guys, but it seems like Willis's name is coming up the most often. So if we don't get one of those big name quarterbacks, or if we get one of those lesser veteran quarterbacks and they're fine with that, then of course Willis or any of these other quarterbacks are out of contention to be our next franchise quarterback, of course. But if we miss on all of the top guys, and if they end up wanting to prioritize one of these draft guys, maybe they still get a veteran, maybe they don't. We're going to dive into that. Also, it looks like Marcus Williams, the safety from the New Orleans Saints, will be available this free agency period for the first time. And we're going to discuss a little bit more than that as well. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, be on the lookout for the constant content. Once I get some more free time, I will start live streaming on Sundays again. And make sure you go check out all of my previous videos. I'm going to keep updating y'all on everything that's going on. Of course, I'm going to do my draft prospect Excel sheet file that I allow all of y'all to access, where I put up all of the draft prospects that we've met with and who we're interested in, and any type of connection that we have to them, so that by the time the draft comes around, you'll have an idea of who we're looking at. And it can be rounds 1 through 7, undrafted free agents, whoever. Who are we linked to, whether it be through rumors, actual meetings, confirmed meetings, Ron Rivera or somebody or another coach or somebody in the front office speaking on a player, speaking highly of them. So be on the lookout for all of that, man. Everything I did last year, I'm gonna do this year and more. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so first of all, of course, why most people are probably here, the big offer for Russell Wilson. Well, first of all, Ron Rivera told reporters during the combine that the Commanders are, quote, trying to truly cover every base, unquote, in their search for their 2022 starting quarterback. And with this recent update, it looks like he's not messing around. It looks like he's definitely telling the truth. Because first of all, there was already a report that we literally called everybody about the quarterbacks. We even called the Chiefs reportedly to see if they wanted to keep Patt Mahomes or if they'd be willing to give him up for whatever value. It'd probably be like selling the whole team. Probably only be Rivera left and just Patt Mahomes out of the entire team left, if that were to actually happen. But that's just really interesting that they're just calling everybody, like literally everybody, even Patt Mahomes, who's clearly not on the trade block at all. Hey man, due diligence, man. But the reason why most of y'all are here is because it's been reported that the Commanders made a strong offer to the Seahawks for quarterback Russell Wilson. However, it didn't go anywhere, and this was reported by Ian Rapoport. This is not just some random source. I mean, it's not to say that everything he says is true, but other sources have followed up and said that this is an actual thing. And apparently we offered multiple first round picks. Not sure if any players were included or if any other picks were included, but multiple first round picks sounds like 3 or more to me. That doesn't necessarily just sound like 2. So that's really interesting. Maybe it was just only 2. Who knows? Maybe it was, because I mean, the fact that it went nowhere, that they didn't even talk back and forth like you got to up your offer. They didn't even give like a counter offer, nothing, just straight up basically just hung up the phone, I guess, like we're not interested. And it just reaffirms what we've already known from the past few weeks, that the Seahawks really don't want to trade him. When Pete Carroll was at the combine and he was getting interviewed and he was having his press conference, Pete Carroll said that when teams call to ask about Russell Wilson, GM John Schneider tells them Wilson is not available, plain and simple. So it sounds like the Seahawks just don't even want to trade him. And that's the point that I made in my previous video, that you can't be mad at Rivera if we don't end up getting one of these top guys, because we can offer whatever we want. If they don't want to trade him, they don't want to trade him. Deshaun Watson is a tricky situation, but like Aaron Rodgers, and most notably Patt Mahomes, but most importantly, a guy like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, doesn't matter what we offer. We can offer them multiple first round picks, Terry McLaurin, all of these things that I don't want to give up. You can include the whole team if you want to. If they don't want to do the trade, they don't want to do it. If the Seahawks simply just don't want to give up Russell Wilson no matter what we offer, then there's nothing Ron Rivera can do. So you can't be too mad at him at that point. I'm gonna be mad though if we end up with no franchise quarterback. Like if we end up with like a Mitchell Trubisky and no draft quarterback, then I'm upset. But if we miss out on these top guys, it's just like, what can you do? We're clearly trying after it's been reported that we offered multiple first round picks for Russell Wilson and they didn't even come back with a counter offer. It's not like they said no, but if you throw in this or that, we'll be willing to do it. So Rivera could counter offer and they could keep negotiating and trying to see if they can meet like a mutual deal. I mean, they just flat out said no to him. But maybe they're just calling around to see what the usual cause for a quarterback is. Cause say they call about Patt Mahomes, who's clearly not on the trade block at all. I mean, not available even in the slightest. But if you were to hear them say like, well, I mean, even though he's not available, if I were to give up Patt Mahomes, it would go for this. And so then you look at Russell Wilson and you compare that and you're like, okay, so if Patt Mahomes would go for this, Russell Wilson would have to go for less than that at the best. And so maybe they're just getting a feel for what the quarterback market actually is and what it would take to get a franchise quarterback. Just getting the viewpoint from different teams and just trying to see if a team is trying to finesse them. Because if you ask the Chiefs what Pat Mahomes would be traded for right now, even though they don't want to trade him at all, and then you ask the Seahawks what they'd be willing to take for Russell Wilson, and it's anywhere near in the same realm, that just shows the Seahawks are just trying to rob Rivera and the Washington Commanders of their draft capital and players. So who knows, man? I mean, again, don't expect us to get any of the top guys. Again, I would only be upset if we end up with one of the lesser guys and we still don't draft a guy. Like Mitchell Trubisky, as much as I like Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, any of those guys, if we bring any of them in and that cancels out our opportunity to get Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, or any of those other guys, then I'm upset. And then moving on to Amari Cooper, it's reported that several sources at the NFL Combine think that Amari Cooper will not be with the Cowboys for 2022. It's been reported that there is a league-wide consensus that it would be an upset if Amari Cooper were to return to the Cowboys this season. So it sounds like he's more than likely going somewhere, anywhere other than Dallas. And that's really interesting because remember when we offered Amari Cooper even more money than the Cowboys were willing to give to him. So now it kind of looks crazy on his part because he chose the Cowboys over us even though we offered him more money, and now he doesn't want to play for the Cowboys anymore. And he still has years left in his deal. It's not like he's a free agent coming up and he's like, you know what, I want to try other places. He still has 3 years left in his deal, including this 2022 season. He won't be an unrestricted free agent until 2025. And which takes me to my next point, that he's a $22 million cap hit each of those years coming up, 2022, 2023, 2024, all respectively. And that's a lot of money, man. We're already trying to figure out how we're going to pay Terry McLaurin. We're waiting to pay Terry McLaurin just in case we go and get one of those top quarterbacks that's going to eat up a lot of cap space. We're still paying Curtis Samuel a good amount of money. Need him to get healthy so he can play. I just don't even think Amari Cooper would be smart. Of course, having Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, Logan Thomas, John Bates would be crazy. That is a crazy arsenal of weapons right there. But it just wouldn't make sense cap space wise. Roster wise, there's definitely a spot for him. It's not like we just have a bunch of number one receivers in the way. Amari Cooper would come in and it would just be him and Terry McLaurin 1A, 1B. Me personally, I'd take Terry McLaurin over Amari Cooper. But that's not to say Amari Cooper's bad, but I definitely think he would be above Curtis Samuel when it comes to wide receiver priority. And when Curtis Samuel is your wide receiver number 3, your receiving group is in great shape. But again, it just doesn't make sense. For the Cowboys, it makes sense to let him go. If Amari Cooper's not happy, hey, you only take on $6 million worth of dead cap and you free up $16 million worth of cap space, and they're gonna need it because, well, I mean, Leighton Vander Esch and all the money they paid the Dak Prescott hire, they're gonna repay everybody like Dexter Lawrence and all of those guys. So it makes sense for the Cowboys to move on from him. And I guess if Amari Cooper is a disgruntled employee right now, it makes sense for him to want to leave, but it doesn't necessarily make sense for him to come to us. But remember, we did offer him a big contract, but that was when things were different. We had more cap space. We didn't already pay Curtis Samuel relatively decent money, well, kind of big money, especially for what he contributed last year. He was drastically overpaid last year, and his cap hit is only going to go up in these next couple of years of his contract. It's a backloaded contract. He's making more money later than he did this past season. As long as he's healthy, we're not going to care, but he's got to be healthy. He's got to produce. But either way, paying Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, and Curtis Samuel like $50 million a year between the three, I just don't think that's a smart move. But again, we offered him $125 million over 5 years back in 2020. But it depends. I mean, he still due quite a bit of money. Maybe he'd be willing to take a pay cut. So if you can get Amari Cooper for cheaper and he's only 27, I think it's smart. But again, for all of the reasons I've already given before, I don't think he's going to take a pay cut. And again, like I've already said, you can't put that much money into just 3 receivers out of your entire roster, eating up that much cap space just for 3 guys, and none of them are quarterbacks. And extending Terry McLaurin to a big contract is priority number 1. If you already have your franchise quarterback and Terry has his money and you have some money left over, then maybe you can go and get Amari Cooper. Otherwise, nah. Prioritize quarterback and Terry McLaurin way above getting Amari Cooper. But again, it would be nice. Next up, is Rivera high on Willis? Josh Taylor tweeted out that Ron Rivera is very high on Liberty quarterback Malik Willis. He's been very vocal about that recently, said he reminds him of Cam Newton when they first met and interviewed. There's even a direct quote from Ron Rivera saying, quote, Malik wanted to stand up when we put on the tape and look and point. You could see how animated he got. Watch me use my eyes, watch me use my eyes. Even though he's raw, you know he understands the concepts. And when I saw that, it reminded me of Cam Newton, because that's one thing Cam understood the concept, and that's what you want. I could say the same thing about Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder, all of the quarterbacks really. So there's a compliment towards Malik Willis, even though he expounded upon Malik Willis in more detail than Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder. It seems like he's fairly impressed with all of these guys, so maybe all of them are on the table. I saw one report a few days ago that said we were mostly interested in Kenny Pickett. Then I saw a few reports that we preferred Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder was second to Malik Willis. And then now I'm seeing most recently that it's just straight up Malik Willis number 1 and everybody else is second and beyond that, which is really interesting. I mean, the Cam Newton comparisons, I can kind of see it. I mean, for Rivera, if he sees Cam Newton in anybody, I don't see a reason why he wouldn't love him. Cam Newton, you could pretty much say, carried that team to that Super Bowl. All of Rivera's best coaching years were on the back of Cam Newton, carrying a pretty bad offense. They had a great defense, but the offense was meh. Ted Ginn Jr., your best receiver, never had a great O-line. So if anybody understands the impact of having an elite mobile quarterback, it's Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera probably doesn't even get this job in Washington, especially for a 5-year deal off the rip, if it weren't for what Cam Newton did for him and helping him reach a Super Bowl even though they weren't able to win it and all of that type of stuff. If anybody should want the next Cam Newton, it's Ron Rivera. And of course, for those of y'all who don't know, Cam Newton, Malik Willis, also Adam Pac-Man Jones, AJ Terrell, and yours truly, Street Scores, all went to Westlake High School, all from the same part of Atlanta. So of course there's those comparisons as well. Cam Newton always comes back and gives back. Malik Willis has been on Cam Newton's 7-on-7 team, all of that. So it's not even just talent and ability and play style. They're like actually very similar in a lot of ways, even outside of football. And then Malik Willis also went to the combine and killed it. I mean, you saw that video where off the record he was helping somebody in need just randomly in the street on the sidewalk. That was really cool. And then people are saying that they're not surprised by that video because everything adds up from the way he's presented himself in interviews and their background research with coaches and players from Liberty. They're saying I'm not surprised that Malik Willis would be doing something like that. Not looking for any credit, just wanting to help when he can. And then on top of all of that, he impressed mightily with the press conferences. He had the best press conferences out of any of the quarterbacks at the combine, and his deep ball looked great too. But most importantly, for what we're talking about right now with his character and his intelligence, I mean, I even like the answer he had to the question on what offense best suits his game. He said, quote, the one that scores points, unquote. And then of course there's a report that teams were surprised by Malik Willis's overall offensive knowledge and ability to retain offensive info and play calls for the position. So I guess coaches and GMs during their interviews were running things through him and see if he could actually react quickly enough and come up with the right answer and diagnose certain offensive schemes and plays and concepts and things like that, and he aced it. And of course people are surprised because he's mobile and all of this other stuff that we don't need to get into, but I'm not surprised. I mean, there's been reports everywhere. A report from Bleacher Report said that Malik Willis is blowing away coaches and execs during combine meetings. So the press conferences, the meetings, everywhere, he was just killing it. But then of course there's going to be competition to get Malik Willis. The Panthers, who pick ahead of us, met with both Malik Willis and Sam Howell. And then Malik Willis also met with a lot of Steelers coaches, not just Mike Tomlin, but several of them. And it's already been heavily reported that they're very interested in him, and he's probably their number 1 quarterback. So the Steelers pick behind us, but they may be aggressive enough to be willing to trade in front of us to get him. So I say all of that to say that if you want Malik Willis, you're probably going to have to trade up to get him. I mean, his stock is rising rapidly. Now, according to odds, before the combine, he opened at a plus 200 to be the first quarterback selected. Now he's negative 115. So huge Huge jump. Next up, Marcus Williams appears to be available. The New Orleans Saints safety will not be franchise tagged this time around. I already predicted that. It just didn't make too much sense to franchise tag a safety twice. So the Saints are going to try to get a long-term deal done, but apparently they couldn't do it last time when they franchise tagged them. They more than likely will not be able to this time around as well, because the price tag is only going to go up after you franchise tag a guy. We've experienced that with Brandon Sheriff, Kirk Cousins. So Marcus Williams may be a free agent, and hey man, if we're not planning on getting a guy like Daxton Hill in the draft, because again, priority is franchise quarterback, I feel like, in the first round. So if you could trade back up into the late first, or maybe he slides to our second, if you can get Daxton Hill, fine, then I'm perfectly fine with Daxton Hill and Cameron Curl being our elite safety tandem. If not, if you got the cap space, please go pay Marcus Williams whatever he wants. And then lastly, Sterling Shepard, man. Apparently the Giants asked Sterling Shepard to take a pay cut, and guys rarely do that, so he may be on the way out of the Giants. He may be a cap casualty. And I kind of like Sterling Shepard, but I feel like he's more depth than anything. I don't think he would come here and just be an automatic, really dependable wide receiver number 2. So I don't really think it's worth it. I mean, maybe if he's extremely cheap, but I don't think he should stop you from, if you planned on getting one of those really talented receivers in this draft class, getting Sterling Shepard in free agency shouldn't stop you from still getting that guy. If you really like Treylon Burks, if you really love my guy George Pickens, any of these guys, there's so many talented receivers in this class. I feel like a lot of them are going to end up being very successful receivers at the NFL level. If you really like any of those guys or multiple of those guys and you planned on getting them originally, signing Sterling Shepard should not stop you from getting one of those guys. So I mean, I'm down for Sterling Shepard if we're paying him pennies, because he would be here for depth. He's not going to come here and it's going to be Terry McLaurin then Sterling Shepard as the dynamic duo. He would be at best our third best receiver if Curtis Samuel's healthy. And again, we're paying Curtis Samuel so much money, we just can't afford to be just giving all kinds of receivers money out here. And Martin Mayhew already said in his press conference at the Combine that he feels really good about the receiving group, and basically that they're probably not going to feel the need to really spend a lot of capital to improve the receiver group. Spending a higher pick in the draft, like first, second, or third, maybe we get a receiver, but maybe it's like later, like 5th, 6th, 7th round, and they're not going to go and spend a lot of money on a guy in free agency. Now, that was before Amari Cooper was rumored to be available, so who knows if they changed their stance on that for Amari Cooper, but it looks like we shouldn't expect as fans for the Washington Commanders to pick up any notable receivers this offseason, whether it be through free agency or the draft. But hey, go and get Marcus Williams, make sure you pay Terry McLaurin, and get that franchise quarterback, please. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section and let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. I appreciate all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors. Let me see scrolling on the screen right now. Man, I am working on some content that is exclusive to sponsors so that y'all sponsorships feel worth it. So stay tuned for all of that as well, and I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.